Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Player Development Pod. This week, we are getting back to interviews. I love interviewing people in this space because there are a lot of people doing great things in the player development space. And I want you to know these people because this, field, this position of impact is done in so many different ways around so many places around the world. And this week, we have Justus Jones from Iowa State. No, we are not related, but he is invited to the cookout, excuse me. And it's so excited to have him here. Justus, I'm going to give a little bit. I'm not going to take everything away from you, but Justus, former student athlete, has been at the NFL level with player engagement, which we'll talk about, and then has been in the collegiate level. He spoke last year at the 2023 Player Development Conference. And all the information for this year's conference is in the show notes. 2024 is in the show notes. He spoke there and he spoke about going from the NFL to college. And that's it. I'm not going to take any more steam. I'm going to let him have it because y'all have heard a lot about me since the last, or a lot from me since the last interview. So, Justus, I want you to take it away. First of all, thank you for being here. All player development potties. Let's give a hand. Thank you so much, or our listeners. Let me not call y'all potties, but our listeners. If you could tell us about yourself.
I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a long time coming. Um, shoot, man, I grew up in Los Angeles, California. Well, I guess I could say Chino Hills now since the Ball brothers put us on the map a little bit.
Chino.
Yeah, man. Grew up there, Cali kid. Loved skateboarding and playing all sports and stuff like that. Baseball was my first true love, man. Honestly, I played baseball when I was four. I didn't play football until I got to high school.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so so went through, elementary school, high school, all the stuff, and I ended up going to Bowling Green, and as a walk-on, oddly enough, Bowling Green in Ohio, not Kentucky,
Right.
and and loved it there, man. I really did. I felt like I tell people I was born and raised in Chino Hills, but I feel like I grew up in Bowling Green.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people in my life that were very influential. My head coach, my strength coach there, a couple teachers there. And that's where I found, one of my best friends, Patrick Martin. And then I grew up with my other best friend, Kyle Lee, and Jeremy Kohler, Dan Parsons, all them. And so I really feel like, Bowling Green was a place for me. The way I ended up there was honestly, man, I wasn't a great student in high school. And so I got recruited a little bit, but I was probably a recruiting red flag. I didn't have the greatest grades. And I didn't run a 4.3 or anything like that. I was just kind of an average athlete. And so ended up at Bowling Green by way of my aunt Allison. Honestly, she worked there, and I she was asking me what I was going to do. I had no idea,
Mhm.
and she was like, "How do you feel about going to Bowling Green?" And I'm like, "Shoot, if you're going to accept me, I love it. I'm going." I felt like at the time going to college was really important to me, and getting a degree was really important to me, and so ended up going there, was a walk on for 2.5 years, then earned a scholarship my third year, and graduated from there. After that, took I don't want to say odd jobs, but took jobs that were not really fulfilling for me. Right, worked at a sporting goods company, worked at State Farm, went down to Miami, sold cruises, went to Tampa, worked in the tech industry in the customer service side and on the sales side. Then when I was at ConnectWise, that was the company in Tampa.
Mhm.
I felt like I was getting called back to football specifically. And I didn't want to answer the call simply because I knew that if I was going to step into some type of football role, that I wanted to have some backing or accreditation behind my name. I just didn't want to be another athlete say, "Hey, head coach, please give me a job." I was a former
Right.
athlete,
Right.
pretty average at best. Please give me something. Please, 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 please.
Right.
So I didn't want to answer that call because I wanted to get a master's and I wanted to do, I wanted to show that I was more than an athlete. And I was at the time 24. I was like, I'm kind of lazy. Don't want to do it. And so eventually prayed about it and got my master's in sports administration at Liberty University.
Mhm.
And I called my head coach from Bowling Green, who is now the head coach at Wake Forest, and I
Right.
wanted to thank him because, like I said earlier, there was a lot of people that were influential in my life, and Coach Clausen was one of them. The reason why he was so influential was because when I first got there, we had a head coach named Greg Brandon, who was a good guy. However, it was tough to lead men for him. And
Yeah.
so we had a lot of guys.
Totally understand that.
Yeah,
Totally
yeah. So
understand that.
so
Yeah.
we had a lot of guys that were just going the wrong direction. I mean, it got so bad that one of the last years that he was there, we had three guys get arrested for raiding a house. Like it's like, what are we doing out here? You know? And so Clausen came in and really cleaned the program up. Gave us some pillars to think about, trustworthiness, loyalty, respect, discipline, all these things that led to eventually him winning a MAC title the 2 years after I left, and
Mhm.
really turning the program around. And so I called him and I texted him. I was like, hey man, I'm doing this football stuff. You know, I'm trying to get back into football, and I don't want anything. I just want to say thank you because you're part of the reason why I'm doing this.
Right.
I saw the transformation from young men to man in our program because of you. And for that reason, he was like, "Oh, awesome, cool, da 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 da. You won an internship, you know, just based off of me reaching out." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, yeah, no, that's awesome." Right now I'm working. Excuse me, and it just so happened in my master's program I needed a an internship anyways. So
Right.
it kind of worked out where, oh, awesome. All right, well, I'll do my internship with you. And so he was like, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I'm kind of leaning compliance and a little bit of operations.
Right.
And the reason why I wanted to do compliance because I didn't want to be a coach. I knew I didn't want to do that. I had
Come
no
on, coach.
itch.
Come on,
No itch to
coach.
coach. Don't want to do it. And I thought that compliance would be the safer route, and I've always taken the safer route in life. I don't know why. I don't take a ton of risk, but I wanted to do compliance for those reasons. But you know, when I got there, it was more. I realized that I like being around players a little bit more. Um,
Mhm.
and I guess I got to rewind when I was finishing my master's, I emailed every compliance director in the state of Florida. At the time, I was living in Florida. I was doing my master's online, and only three people reached back out. The compliance director from UCF, another compliance director in Lakeland, and then this woman named Hannah Delp. And I would credit her because she's part of the reason why I found out what player development was because of what she was doing. And
Right.
so she was a compliance director, but she was doing player development at the same time at this small school. And
Right.
the biggest sport they had was baseball. So you can imagine that like she could really wrap her arms around a lot of people because if your biggest sport is not football, then that drastically shifts the
Yeah.
number of student athletes you have.
You're down 120 immediately.
Right, right.
Right.
And so for her, I got to shadow her for a day, and she, you know, she was doing compliance stuff. She was telling me about the player development stuff she was doing, but she didn't even call it player development or student athlete development. It was just like, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm like, that's not compliance. I
Right.
know that, but
Right.
I'm looking at this compliance stuff and I'm looking at this stuff. I'm like, I can't keep my eyes off of this. Like this is something that I want to do. The compliance stuff, man, that's okay. But like this is what I actually want to do.
Right.
And so I really have to credit her because she opened my eyes to the possibility of something different. And so I still was thinking about the compliance and doing what Hannah Delp did, but I found out there was a role just for that. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Okay. Now my gears start to turn. And so, fast forward, I'm back in I'm in Wake Forest, or excuse me, I'm at Wake Forest, and I find an article about a guy named Duke Preston, who is in Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing player engagement. And he was a former player, played 5 years with the Bills, had a cup of coffee with Green Bay, and then ended his career in Dallas. And I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I was like, "Hey, man, like I love what you're doing. Can I just talk to you about what you do?" Right? That was it. And again, not asking for anything, didn't ask for an internship or job or this or that. As the story goes, I kind of laugh about it. He kind of ghosted me for 2 months, but he finally got back out, reached back out in November, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you back in Florida? Are you in North Carolina? I have this internship. Are you interested?" I'm like, "Oh shoot, yes, yeah, please." You know, and so me and my wife, we were talking about this and we were like, man, going down to Florida would be nice again. But in my mind, again, my kind of not necessarily pessimistic, but like the view on these type of things because in your mind it's like, man, it's the NFL. Like there's only so many people in this role because he worked for the Buccaneers. There's so many people in this role. Like there's no shot. Like there's probably millions of people that are applying, and like I just have no shot to this. So like it's not a big deal. Like we'll just continue to live in North Carolina and do our thing. And so I interviewed with him, and I felt like the for the first time ever when I interviewed with Duke, it didn't feel like an interview
Mhm.
because I felt like I could just talk about myself and talk about who I am as a man, as a Christian, as a husband, as a getting ready to be or father to be. Um, and that's what I feel like player development is talking through talking about things with players through your story, right? And so like even the guys here, it's just like I talk about what I've been through and what they're going through because me being a former player and now a husband and a father and being on both sides and being a walk on, being a scholarship player, starting, not starting, like I've seen it all, I felt it all, and so it was the first time that I was on an interview and it didn't feel like an interview at all. I
Yeah.
felt so comfortable. Him being a Christian man, me being a Christian man, it's just like we gelled very, 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 very easily. And eventually got the job in Tampa as an intern. That turned into a full-time role for 3 years. And then Coach Campbell and my old strength coach from Bowling Green, he's here too, Coach Hillman,
Coach
reached out
Hillman.
to me. You know,
He's one of the few people I met in the role when I was in Kansas in pregame. Like I
yep.
was standing there, he walked right up to me. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, Jones, you're the guy who sends out all the emails about." I'm like, "Yeah, nice to meet you."
Yeah, man. So Hillman was our strength coach at Bowling Green, and he's now the director of player performance operations here. And he reached out to me honestly in 2021, and he was curious about me coming to Iowa State to be player development here, to be the director of player development here. And at the time, I didn't feel comfortable leaving yet because I feel like there's still work to be done with some of our players in Tampa. Obviously, winning a Super Bowl and coming off of that high doesn't really help their case.
Just
So,
saying, just saying. Everybody doesn't have Super Bowl rings. I got a Big 12 ring, but I don't have a Super Bowl ring.
so I elected to stay in Tampa one more year, and then they reached out again. I didn't honestly, I didn't know that if that was going to be an opportunity anymore. So I just kind of took it for what it was. I was like, hey, it's not the right timing. Again, there's like 7, 8, probably 10 guys that I really want to dig into before I go, because they're either on the verge of getting cut or they're on the verge of moving on somewhere else, or they have this great opportunity to go from practice squad or the 53rd man on the roster to getting a big paycheck. And so I felt like I was not comfortable leaving yet. And so they reached out again. I didn't know that they were going to reach out again, but they reached out again in 2022 and I felt more comfortable. And, that's where I am now. So that's a little bit about, my story to shoot May or what is this, March 21st,
Yeah.
2024.
No, I appreciate you. So you told us who you are, and then you told us how you got into player development. And one thing I was thinking about what you said about being ghosted by Duke. I might do a episode that's called "Don't Be Afraid of the Player Development Ghost." Uh, I might because I mean it's real. Like it's
Mhm.
somebody. I mean there's people that hit you up and you get busy. You hit them up 2 months later, but I've hit people up 3 months later. It's not what I prefer, but it does happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. How would you define player development?
Shoot, let me think. How would I define player development? I think I would define player development as part mentor, part brother, um, part academic counselor, um, part babysitter. Let's see here. Part property manager. But ultimately, I think if I'm being serious here, I think it's a person who or player development is a role that helps mentor young men. If we're talking about football specifically, young men turning into whole men, right? And so I think, the whole man I got from Duke Preston, but the whole man to me is someone who accepts responsibility for what he does, right, wrong, or indifferent, rejects passivity in his life, not letting life take advantage of him, loving and leading courageously, whether that be a family member, your teammate, your wife if you are blessed enough to have one,
Mhm.
and your children if you're blessed enough to have those, loving leading those people courageously, and then investing in things that last. And I think the last piece of that, the investing in things that last, is so important to me because in this new age of, now we're in 2024, but this new age of instant satisfaction, instant gratification, everyone's looking for those quick fixes, quick hits, and that doesn't make life worth living. The things that you invest in that last make life worth living. And I go to the example of two people, or really three people, my best friends, or my good friends, Pat and Kyle, and then my wife. Those are three relationships that I invested in, and those have obviously have those ups and downs, but those people I know if I turn around, they're going to be there. And if you don't invest in things or people in relationships that don't last, I mean, you're going to turn around and no one's going to be there, you know? And so I think that's what it is. It's helping young men, again, football specifically, helping young men transform themselves from young man to whole man, if that makes sense. That's what I view player development. Now, there's a caveat of ways to do that: professional development, personal growth, mental health, on-field performance, off-field growth, like all those things that if we get into the nitty-gritty,
Mhm.
that's, you know, if you it's like talking all that stuff is like talking ball to coaches, you know. If I go into it, it's different. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, but ultimately that's what player development is. You're trying to transform these young men that come in at 18 and help them transform into whole men. Now on the NFL side, it's a little different, where you're trying to allow the player to be the best in the world at what he does, on the field. Now, again, there's a number of different ways to do that, because some men might need help off the field.
Right.
Men might need help with organization. Some might need help with finances. Some might need help with dealing with family members. But ultimately, in the NFL, you're trying to allow them to be the best in the world at what they do to set them up for life after ball. So that's the NFL version, but the college version is, how can I help this young man who came in wet behind the ears, 18, transform from young man to whole man? So those are the two kind of, if I'm going college and then pro, those are kind of the two I guess the two lanes.
Well, let's stay there because you have experience with both. And the next question was going to be roles and responsibilities of your job. So let's say I'm a 18-year-old sports management student who
Mhm.
doesn't want to do athletics, doesn't want to coach, but I looked at Iowa State's football roster and I see director of player development. I wonder what his roles and responsibilities are. And then I do more digging and like, oh, he's with the Buccaneers. I wonder what his roles and responsibilities were there. So if you want to share kind of what your roles and responsibilities are right now as a director and what they were. That's a better question. What are your roles and responsibilities are as a director, and what are your roles and responsibilities were when you were under a director? Because I get that question a lot in my course because I teach it. I've only been in a director role in the role, and so they always ask me
Yeah.
like, "Hey, well, what is it like?" And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna find out because I only go off my experience. I try not to speak about things I haven't experienced. So if you can answer that, what are your roles and responsibilities as director, and how were they in the NFL under Duke Preston?
Yeah. So the way that I'll give the short answer then the long answer. So a director, it's like if you're thinking about creating a car, right, or making a car, the director is someone who designs the car, right? If you're looking at like a Lexus or a Toyota, right? You have the graphic designers or the engineers that help design the car and say, hey, this is gonna work, this is not gonna work, da da da. Then you have the people that actually make the car, right? The stampers and the people that screw, that's the coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you need both,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the director is the one that's driving the ship and that has the vision for what his or her department looks like. And then your coordinator says, okay, cool. How can I help fulfill that? How can I help
That's good.
set
That's
up
good.
the team room for our meeting? How can I help bounce ideas off you. This is what I think. Hey, I got this information from a player. What do you think? How should we handle it? And then the director has the vision for how you should handle it. So that's kind of the short
I
answer.
like that. I
Long
like that.
answer. The long answer is the director. If I'm speaking from a director role, the director again has the vision for what player development should look like. But then you help as a director. I think you help guide the culture and shape the culture, right, of a program. So Coach Campbell has a standard of culture, or he has a standard and he has expectations, right? And those are our standards. You help promote those standards by way of, okay, these are the things we're going to talk about in our meetings. How are we going to go about studying for classes? How are we going to be on time? So for instance, his standard is for classes, sit in the first two rows and be 10 minutes on time or 10 minutes early.
Mm.
Cool. Love it. How can I promote an even deeper standard?
Yeah.
So my standard is, this might be a hot topic, but my standard is, I don't want you wearing pajama pants. I don't want you wearing do-rags, and I don't want you wearing bonnets in that classroom. When you're here in this building, that's cool. I'm with it. You could do whatever you want. This should be your home. This should be your sanctuary. But when you go out onto that campus, you're representing not only yourself, not only your family, but you're representing the team. So you need to represent yourself well. And just being honest, being in Iowa, people are going to start looking at you differently, A, because you're on the football
Absolutely.
team, and B, because about 75% of our team is Black.
Right.
And so they're always going to look at you a little differently. So I need you to represent yourself a little better, right? So as a coordinator, I wouldn't have said that.
Right. Right.
As a coordinator, I'm like, I can't say that. No way.
Right.
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 So like you help promote the culture that the head coach or the GM is trying to get accomplished or trying to do. And again, it's by way of small things like that. It's by way of how you're going to handle finances. So it's not seeping into your football life. How are you going to handle relationships so it doesn't seep into your football life? How are you going to handle um, shoot, I'm trying to think. Oh, how are you going to handle decision making on a Friday night so it
Mm.
doesn't affect your football life,
Yeah.
right? How are you going to handle, oh, shoot, I have an internship I need to do. How are you going to handle that so it doesn't affect your football life, right? So those are, I think, again, driving the ship or designing the car to fit the culture of what the head coach is trying to get accomplished. That's kind of the director, and then the coordinator or the person underneath him is the nuts and bolts. Okay, you say you were gonna tackle finances. Okay, what do I need to do to make sure that, hey, we're tackling that and we're essentially putting a stamp on it. Like
Right.
he might like Duke. There was a lot of days where Duke, would say something or he said like, "Hey, let's go over this PowerPoint." Or, "Hey, let's go over that." He used Prezi. "Hey, let's go over this Prezi." And I'll say, "Oh, well, maybe we should talk about this, or I like this. What if we added this?"
Right.
So it was just another set of eyes to make sure that we were hitting and tackling all of our bases to make sure that they really understood what was going on.
Yeah.
And then me personally, from my role, I ran teamworks for the Buccaneers too.
Right.
So any new player, I got them. I made sure they signed in the teamworks. I got their emergency contact information. They had to sign a couple things for the NFL, and then something that I kind of that Duke allowed me to do was handle families and significant others. And so I got to know all the families
That's valuable.
from yeah, so from Tristan Wirfs' mom to Sean Murphy Bunning's mom to
Yeah.
Blaine Gabbard's wife and Ryan Griffin's wife and Dominican Sue's, or all these people that I got to really wrap my arms around. It was something that uh it's hard to do as one person,
Yeah.
just in that
Absolutely.
role.
Absolutely.
So Duke saw it as an opportunity to say, okay, Justice, you're here now. Let's expand, right?
Right.
Let's not just continue to move down the same direction. Let's expand. And so he gave me that opportunity. So we had newsletters, weekly newsletters for the families, monthly newsletters for the significant others. I guess I would say not, I guess, but there was a lot of things that we were able to grow because of now not having just one person, but two people in the role. So again, if I can kind of paint the picture again, the director is the person that says, hey, we have this new Toyota RAV4 that we're trying to put out. How are we going to design it, right? How are we going to design it to make it the safest? How are we going to do this? Where's the steering wheel going to go? Is it going to be at a 45-degree angle? Is it going to be this? And then the coordinator says, all right, cool. Let's stamp it. Let's screw drive it. Let's make sure the wheels are tight. And then let's send it on down the line. So we're good. So I guess that's the way I would say if I think I answered the question.
No, that's a great illustration. And what I've told a lot of people taking my course, or younger professionals or straight out of school. And like I said, I've been a director, but I remember when I was an assistant coach for my head coach. And when I was coaching in high school, I did want to be a head coach at some point. Found out player development is the head coach off the field. That's a whole other podcast for another day. But when I was an assistant, I was like, let me be the assistant that I would want under me as a head coach. And
Yeah.
so what you basically talked about, which I love, is like, and we'll have a segment here where you'll talk about who you would want to hire in the role. But I think a lot of people who want it, everybody wants to be director. There's nothing wrong with having goals, and you understand different things. And, but it's like, be the coordinator that you would want to hire when you're the director. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate you like saying that. There's so much value in knowing the family. Like I had to do it, unfortunately. I did it by myself for so many years. Shout out to Lauren Hawkins, who crushed it as a student assistant at Kansas. But
You had a
that
student
family
assistant?
dynamic is, huh?
You had a student assistant?
So she was my intern, and
Oh man.
yeah, so basically what I did was, hey, look, I'm about to give y'all game directors, whatever. So she was doing a great job, right? And I was like, one day I was like, put assistant on LinkedIn. She's like, what? But I was like, nobody's gonna check. Put assistant because it looks better than year two as an intern. So anyway, but I did have an intern. She was really good. I had two actually, but I made a mistake. I made a big mistake in selecting the wrong one. And what I learned in that is availability is the best ability. I picked a young lady who had a lot of stuff going on and she couldn't meet it. And once she couldn't do it, they didn't give me that spot back. So I learned that one. So but yeah, I had two, man. I messed that up. I hired
Yeah.
the wrong one.
I had one, or I still kind of technically have one. His name is CJ Carter.
Yeah,
Great guy.
I know CJ. Yeah, we're gonna
Mhm.
talk. I
Yep.
know CJ.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave it alone. All right.
Shout out to CJ
CJ
taking
Carter, baby.
player development workshops. Hey, they work. I'm gonna leave it alone. I'll leave it
Hey,
alone. They
hey,
work though.
hey, hey.
They work. You know what I'm saying? They work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it there. All right.
Proof is in the pudding, people. Proof is in the pudding.
I'm just saying, CJ's gonna be a testimonial here soon, but I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna let CJ do that.
Oh, Kurt too.
So
Kurt.
I can't give it away. All right, I see. You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I be trying to tell people, man, it's like I gotta grow in that because I'm a modest, faith-based man, Christ follower myself, but I'm also learning like testimonials are like you need them. I mean,
Do.
that's honestly when we talk about faith, testimony is huge in that. So it's like
Do.
taking that to the business side. And yeah, let me stop there because I'll go whole. I'll start. There's a bass organ in the back. I'll start preaching. Now when we look at, I see something in the back. I really, really like it. I want, first of all, please tell me how you got that, where you got that done. But Professionalism Pro Day. Now, I'm not going to take the fire away from you, but I'm going to ask you, what is the best program and initiative you created, and why is it Professionalism Pro Day? I had to. Yo, I learned that.
Obviously, Professionalism Pro Day is probably the best one. And I gotta give a shout out to Caleb Thornhill. Um,
Yes, yes.
he did something with the Dolphins that
Oh,
I always wanted to do. It was his business combine.
yep.
And I knew that I wanted to do it in Tampa, but I knew we didn't have the resources to do it in Tampa. Um, and so I was like, whenever I'm a director, if it's college or pro, I want to try to emulate that somehow, some way. I don't want to completely swagger jacket, but I want to do something like that.
Yeah,
And
take the
so
principles. That's what I tell people.
right, right. And
Yeah.
so I got to give a shout out to Caleb because he's really the person that gave me this idea. Not professionals pro they per se, but it was based off of the business combine. And so if you don't know what Caleb did with the Dolphins, he had the business combine where a lot of his players during the offseason got to speak to high profile people in business.
Here in
Uh,
the show notes right here, you can click right here. Talked about it on the podcast. There we go.
so so he allowed his players to talk to different companies and fields of study that they were interested in. Similar to that, Professionalism Pro Day allows our guys and or really allows our guys to talk to companies within their major and outside of their major to get an understanding of what each company does. Okay, so let's say I'm a communications major. Now, let me take a step back before I even go into that.
Right.
It's based off of our top five majors. So this year was kinesiology.
Nice.
It was kinesiology, communications, criminal justice, engineering and agriculture, and I believe it was finance or something of that nature. And so I bring in nine companies based off of that. And then this year we even added a sector called coaching, right? So like we brought in a coach from Waukee High School down the road to allow them to talk through what a coach does day in and day out. And so really some of the questions were, where do you see the industry going in 5 to 10 years? How did you get into the industry? What are some compensation or the salary ranges of
Yeah.
that industry? Um, what's the growth of this industry from like you said, from coordinator to director, vice president, whatever it is, and then kind of letting them tell their story as well, right? So we did this because I think what I saw in my time was that in my time at Bowling Green was I didn't have the same opportunity as a regular student had to do an internship
Yeah.
or to talk to these different companies, right? And so we did this for one to let them talk to the companies, but each one of those companies has two internships in the summer for our guys specifically. And so it's still you have to apply, right? You have to do go through the whole process. But they're dedicated to our guys, right? And they work around our schedule. And so the problem sometimes with student athletes, and not them specifically, but the time commitment, is that they don't have the same opportunities as a normal student or the 20,000 students on campus have, where
Right.
they go to class from 9 to 12 and then they're done for the rest of the day. They can do an internship, they can do this, they have off in the summer, yada yada. So I wanted to provide a space for our guys to have that. And Professionals Pro Day, I feel like is accomplishing that now. We had 60 guys that um, signed up for internship interviews this Professionalism Pro Day.
Let's
And
go.
so now with that, it's only for the guys going into their third, fourth, or fifth year. And I'll shout out to Jared Hufford, sixth year. So like
Say, I'm pretty sure you got some over five over there.
to Darian Porter and Jared Hufford. But I do that because my philosophy on player development is build the human first and then build the professional. You can't touch on like a freshman hitting resumes is like I feel like that for me personally I think that that's a little too early. They're floundering. They got especially the guys that are coming in the winter. If you're a freshman, you got 15 credit hours, you got 6 a.m.s, you got spring ball now, you got oh no no no.
You got
A
the cold rookie
resume
from Houston, Texas.
a resume is so far in the in the wings. They're just trying to survive. So like that program, the Professionals and Pro Day program, is for the third, fourth, and fifth year guys because of that reason. Now the Professionalism Pro Day, I'll say, is one of three parts of our cyclone path to profession in the winter for the those third, fourth, and fifth year guys. So this year we worked on resume building as phase one. Phase two was the etiquette dinner and etiquette training, how to handshake, how to eat, and then it was professionals and pro day. So I would feel like I said, I think professionals and pro day is the best piece of programming within that because we try to switch it kind of every year. So last year we had Will Baggett come in, shout out.
Will, bag talk. Let's go. That's my guy, man.
We had Will Baggett come in and talk about your professional presence, where to sit, and then we had Kareen come in and talk about LinkedIn. So it kind of rotates every year what we talk about, but it's usually one tangible skill, which was last year was LinkedIn and this year was resume building, one something you can actually physically take, and
Mhm.
then one intangible skill. So the etiquette or the professional presence, and then we go into professionalism pro day. So professionalism pro day is by far the best, I think. Um, but overall, I think that the winter for the psychopath profession, I love all of it, but I think the professionalism pro day is probably the best one.
Yeah, the I love the wording with the professional pro day, and that's I love that.
Oh,
All right.
I got to give one shout out. Dylan Minshaw is our graphic designer. He designed that
Mhm.
for me. So like, you really can't see it, but that's based off of our actual pro day logo.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and so like it usually just says Iowa State Pro Day.
All right, here we go. 2020. This is what I think I see. I see the Iowa State symbol.
Hmm.
I see the block underneath, which is, I think that represents the Unity, Jack Trice.
Yep, that's
Okay,
correct.
perfect. It looks like on the right, it would be your, on this side, it looks
Hmm.
like that's a briefcase.
Yep, yep.
And on the left, I could be wrong, but that looks like the state of Iowa, but I could be wrong.
You're not close, but handshake. It's a handshake.
Oh,
It's a
oh, okay.
handshake.
3 out of 4, 75%, batting 75%. That's GOAT level.
That's
So
good. That's good, man. That's good.
all right, so you talked earlier about being a coordinator in your role. Now, this is something I'm doing now with the interviews because I personally believe that everyone in player development should have help. I totally believe that. I think nothing against recruiting departments. Shout out to all the recruiting departments I've worked with, but I always see, especially now with the portal and all things happening, recruiting gets them in the door. You need player development to retain them and keep them. And I think there needs to be, I've always felt like that even before. But anyway, I don't want to get in that debate. Nothing against people in recruiting. I just think player development staff should have at least one more person, at least two people in the role, at least. But let me get off my high horse and my soapbox. What would you look for in someone you would hire in your department? So let's say we have a coordinator of player development. You just press send on the application. As they come through, what are you looking for?
Someone who has good organization skills. I think someone who this is gonna sound really dumb, but can spell really well. I struggle sometimes, and Duke's gonna laugh at me if he sees this, but I struggled sometimes in Tampa. It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm sorry. But someone who could spell, again, that's kind of a weird one, but someone who has who cares about players and can be around players and can be personable. One of the things that a football team has is obviously you have young black kids, but you have also young white kids who come from the inner city, young white kids who come from farming, young black kids who come from the suburbs. So there's a lot of different personalities on the team. And so I would say someone who is organized, someone who can spell, someone who can be around players, and someone who can make the players feel comfortable, but also hold them accountable. Right.
That's
So I think those are the qualities that I look for. Because me personally, I would need someone who I could send a draft to of what we're gonna do, and it's like, hey, can you proofread this for me, please? Like and have full confidence in saying like, yep, we're good. We are absolutely good. Or he or she comes to me with a player and says, hey, or with a player problem, it's like, hey, this is going on. It's like, okay, I could trust that either I can send you out and give you some tools to work on, or tools to work on with that player, or say, hey, I got it, and not have ego or anything come with that. So I think those are the qualities that I would look for.
all right. Perfect. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I think like that comfortability is huge. And I used to say that a lot with coaches because I mean I saw people who were like, man, it's in nothing against anyone that played. I didn't play at the level you played, but I would see a lot of form even that were coaches that were like, hey, I want to get back in it because I remember what it was like for me. And I always want to say, like, but this whole locker room ain't you. This locker room is a lot of different people. And so, like, for instance, in Houston, we have a segment of the city that is more uh, urban, but rural at the same time. Like they ride horses in the street. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people don't understand that, and they're like, "Wait, so?" he listens to this, and yeah, they know every single country song. Like, you know, and so it's just like being comfortable and not having, you know, a lot of preconceived notions, biases, whatever it may be. All right. Best advice. This is the advice section. Excuse me. I love advice. I love hearing professionals give advice to people. What's the best advice you've received in your life?
In my life, you're not going to bat 1,000. Meaning, there's going to be guys who get it sometimes. There's going to be guys who don't get it, but you can't get caught up on the guys. You can't get hung up so much on the guys who you may lose because of the transfer portal or lose because of they're not getting it or one of either one of those things. You have to continue to trust in your process and understand that if you put your best foot forward, good things are going to happen for those players. But you cannot get hung up on the wins and losses of players. Um, I would say that in the role, that's the best advice I've gotten so far. Because there are days where I'm like, golly, man, like
Yeah.
I feel like it's this close, man. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know? So that's the best advice.
No, that's huge. That batting 1,000 is something I'm learning in this solopreneur entrepreneur journey.
Hmm.
It's like, look, I'm telling you, like I've thought too much about posts, podcasts, graphics, this, and whenever I just press send, I'm like, whatever. Here's what they need. It always goes crazy, and I'm just like, so just like, and sometimes it doesn't, but it's like learning that lesson, that transferable skill from being an athlete. It's just like, all right, we got to keep going. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Appreciate you that saying that. Now, want to dedicate this once again to those who there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast. Shout out to all the directors who take time to listen to this. I really truly appreciate y'all because I know how much time y'all have, and I thank y'all if y'all listen to it on the way into work. If you sit down and watch a YouTube channel, it's always great. The YouTube video, excuse me. But there are a lot of people who watch this, listen to this, that want to get into space, and everybody can't, because based off what you do, your role, not only professional, but then personally, time with family, everybody can't get to you that wants to get to you. So this is a space where you're able to give advice to those who are looking to get into this space.
Keep swinging. Keep swinging. Because even when you think you're down and out, you're gonna come in November and give you some type of internship in Tampa, you know.
Yeah.
But no, keep swinging, keep swinging, keep reaching out. Like, and that's a perfect thing. Like when I reached out to every compliance director, that was about 109 emails. I got 3 responses back, 3,
Yeah.
and one of them allowed me to think of things differently and led me to the space that I didn't know existed. So keep swinging, keep reaching out to people. Um, and don't get discouraged. I
Yeah.
would say don't get discouraged.
No, that's awesome. Definitely hear that baseball background. You're not gonna bat 1,000. Keep swinging. It's coming out. Baseball definitely was your first love. You probably didn't even notice it. Oh, that's the podcast. Well, no, it's not. Here we go. Rapid fire. All right, number one, what's something you're working on? A personal habit, a professional habit, something you're working on and trying to get better at.
Being vulnerable and posting on social media more.
Here we go. There we go. All right. If you had $25 gift card, somebody walked in, put a $25 gift card on your desk for lunch, and Coach Campbell said you have to leave the office to go get lunch somewhere in Ames. Where are you going?
Chipotle.
Okay. All right. What about yeah, I get it. I get it. You know, I always say at Chipotle they don't miss. Like I'm
Or cornbread in Ames.
okay, cornbread it is. All right, perfect. All right, now let's say the next day someone comes in, gives you a $150 gift card for dinner. Coach Campbell says, leave, take your wife out to dinner. Where are you going?
801 Chop House in Des Moines.
Okay, 801. All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. Now, if you could be a part of any band, past or present, which one would it be? Or musical group?
Van Halen.
Van Halen is what you said, right?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
make sure.
Yes,
All right, there we go.
sir.
All right, yeah,
I
yeah.
know it's off the beaten path.
Hey,
Van
look,
Halen.
I'm EWF. I'm Earth, Wind, and Fire. I would have been in the colorful stuff. All right. If you could act in a movie with any actor, which actor would it be?
Does the actor have to
Actor or
be
actress?
well,
Yes.
does the actor have to be in the movie? Like, or can you bring him into the movie?
Mm. Never had that one. Whatever you would like to do.
I would say Moneyball, and I'll bring in Denzel Washington.
I knew for some reason I knew you were gonna say Denzel Washington. All right, crazy story about how I met Denzel Washington. This is a crazy story. I was a high school coach, like you said, swinging, reaching out. I wanted to work the Tulane football campus. I was trying to get to know college coaches. I'm working the Tulane football camp, doing what I'm supposed to do. They said, "Hey, can you go back down and break down the registration table?" I'm breaking down the registration table. One of the moms in there is like, "Oh snap, that's Denzel Washington." And so I look and I'm like, "Yo, that's Denzel Washington." He's chewing gum like he wouldn't chewing gum, right? He literally walks by and like it's like a blur. He comes back. He's like, how can I take you? I'll get you when I come back. So he literally comes back. He takes a picture with her. I take a picture and I'm like, hey, can I? He's like, I gotta go. Sorry, young man. So that was my interaction with
That's
Denzel.
crazy.
Yeah. All right. How do you take care of yourself? You help a lot of people. How do you take time for yourself?
I try to work out as much as I can because that's a release for me.
Perfect. What are you reading right now?
Two things: the business of the 21st century
Ooh,
and crucial conversations.
Crucial Conversations. I got that one. That's back there. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. All right. Last question. You say you're posting more on social media. How can we find you on social media?
So I think my Twitter, let's see here. Twitter is the JT Jones.
Mhm.
That's the Twitter. And the TikTok, that's the only things that I have really. TikTok is at Justus Jones. There we
Perfect.
go.
Perfect. We'll put it in the show notes. That would be in the show notes for y'all. And I did answer your question on TikTok. I would take the natty out of hope. Something about that confetti, man. When we won the Big 12 championship, man, I understood why people cried. My family ran to me, man, and I was straight. Ah! So, but thank you so much for taking time. Really appreciate you. Excited to have you on here. Excited for all the things you're doing out of state. And hey, maybe since you're 3 hours away, I'm in Kansas City. Maybe we'll do a day in the life, and I get to follow you from 6 to whatever. Hey, we gonna make it happen. But definitely, we'll see you at the family reunion. Thank you so much for being here, and for you all that are watching. You know what I always say: go out and create generational impact. Don't wait. Create that generational impact today, and check out the show notes.
Hey, can I give a shout out real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Come on.
I want to give a shout out to my wife Bree and my
Yeah.
my daughter Zola and my son Liam and my
Mhm.
mom.
Nice. Come on. Hey, I love shout outs. I love shout outs. We'll see y'all.